Hello, everybody, and welcome to this amazing panel discussion on determining ROI from AI, POC to scale framework, and value realization. One of the hottest topics out there, Gartner claims that 53% of AI projects tend to fail as far as ROI and value realization is concerned. McKinsey has come out with a number of almost $300 billion that were spent on AI projects, and only 25% of them showed any kind of value realization, which beckons us to say what is it that companies should do, and how is it that companies should solve for this issue, despite the fact that AI is the largest and the biggest talking point in the world today. Awesome. So the format is simple. I will ask a few questions from you guys. Let's try and be as real as possible. Show talk about certain use cases that you guys have come across with, and how people can structure their thought process and ensure that they're getting the right value from this panel. Bhavani, I'll start with you. Just based on
Sure.
your experience, how do you think companies need to think from a framework and a structure standpoint for ROI for AI? And how does it change with Gen AI coming into this world? So if you can just talk about your experiences and how you've gone about it.
Yeah, sure, Abhishek. So let me first talk about that, what you talk about the framework or the key factors when we think about the ROI. So be it say traditional AI earlier and then currently the generative AI, that's the initiative that we are currently working on. ROI is hinges on a blend of the which is quantitative and the quality factors. So definitely that's we always have to look into. So if I talk about the first part, that is quantitative gains, that is we in other what we call it's a hard ROI, like in terms of the cost saving, be it say automation, reduced errors, or faster processing. That we with this we are how we are reducing the cost or the savings that we are doing. And secondly, that the revenue uplift, like through personalization, upselling, or new product offering that we are doing in blend with the Gen AI, right? Or the traditional AI earlier. Now, other factors that we talk about, like efficiency gains in operations, supply chain, or customer service. And the most important, that's the quantitative part that I can talk about, the time to value. Definitely, that is the major aspect of how when we did talk about the framework or how we can calculating the ROI, right? The acceleration, especially in the POC to the MVP transitions that we are doing. Now, coming to the strategic and the intangible benefits, not only that hard ROI, it's also now it is we have to understand the what is a soft ROI, also how we can get this in place, like improved employee productivity, brand differentiation, customer experience, risk mitigation in terms of the compliance or any regulatory framework that we talk about. And the third aspect that I like to highlight on the contextual variable in uh, like data readiness, uh, talent availability, change management, or we can talk about the governance as well as the ethical alignment, because that's the major aspect that we also had to look into, like a ethical AI that we call it. Now, coming to your questions about how Gen AI is, uh, this advent of Gen AI has introduced uh, in this space and how it is impacting the ROI assessment. So, firstly, definitely Gen AI is a game changer in the last couple of years that we are currently working on, and definitely with faster prototyping, broader adoption, increased focus on trust, hallucination control, shift from the model centric to the outcome centric metrics, and definitely Gen AI adding the value, right? And that's impacting how we are calculating the ROI. And if I talk about the current success rate in the market in terms of the going to the Gartner, or if it's a McKinsey, definitely all the internal benchmark that we talk about, I can see that the trend is going upwards in terms of when we are 2023. If I talk about that time, we are just in the market and we are just doing the experimentation, so that how we can doing a models and building this the new framework. Whereas 2024, we have seen how we have enhanced in terms of the trust, scalability, and the cost control. But
Uh-huh.
now this year, if I talk about GenAI is already a workforce partner for us. With a 90%, I can say that already enterprises have adapted to this, and then it's helping us how we can get the maturity. And definitely, other point is their success rate is by maturity. If I talk about the in percentage, based on definitely for Gartner and other uh, uh, external sources, the 30 to 40% of GenAI POCs is already converted into scale deployment. We have already deploying, and we are in the other diversified portfolio or the projects that we're currently working on. Whereas 60 to 70% is still projects show the positive ROI. And that's, we can see that next probably 12 to 18 months that we can see that's the scaling can be done. So with
Wonderful.
this, yeah, so that's my thought process.
Wonderful, Bhavani. I liked a few points that you talked about, the hurt framework, the fact that it's not just tangible, but there are a lot of intangible benefits as
Yeah.
well. And like you pointed out, the trend is looking upwards. But I would want Manoj to come in here. And Manoj, while the way Bhabani spoke about it, it seems quite structured and it seems an easy job to do, but we still see the less than 50% success rates, which even Bhabani talked about, right? What are some of the reasons as to why companies are not able to get the kind of value that they're looking for, and have not consistently got that over time?
Yeah, yeah. Good question, Abhishek. And it's something really puzzling, right? When you're looking at a step in technology which is more sophisticated, you would expect the adoption to be faster, and it is true to some extent. The adoption at the POC level is extremely fast, but when it comes to production grade applications, it's difficult. The part of the problem is the ease with which the solution or the technology is implementable. At least as a first step, there's very little friction, right? All you need is a little bit of investment to pay for the LLM tokens and a couple of team members to build something, right? And there you go, you have a POC. And compared to traditional POCs, which might take three anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks, you can actually turn around something in just 2 weeks, right? To show that there is something that is working. But you know, a sword's sharpness is only material as long as you're able to take it out of its cover, right? So something that works in 2 weeks, just because it works does not mean that it can be scaled. And there are three places where I've seen where things typically fall apart when you're trying to make the journey from POC to production. The first one is there's a discrepancy in the way you evaluate these POCs, and you evaluate how effective they are to 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 judge or conclude that it's ready for production. Most times, I've have to get in and convince the customers to move beyond traditional LLM evaluation metrics. A good model, let's say a Sonnet 4, or a GPT 4.0, might be great in certain parameters, like let's say in its hallucination score, in its helpfulness score, and so on. You might pick up uh, an evaluation chart and say the score's great in 8 out of 10 metrics. But as long as the tool or the solution does not score high in terms of the company's context, the company's use case, and the user's judgment parameters, it does not help, right? And that's one thing which I've seen most teams falter, that they go by traditional LLM metrics, but using a GenAI application and judging it, it's not just left to the LLM metrics, right? That's one. The other one is with respect to the scalability itself, right? What works at POC may not necessarily work in at scale. A customer SaaS company, we implemented a POC, which was uh, for assisting store managers to get insights faster, without having to build ETLs and so on. So we built an agentic layer which the store manager could ask questions. The agent goes to the database, picks up does the data analysis, comes back with the insight. While this worked great at POC, the company soon realized that when you do it at scale, the cost of implementation does not go linearly with the number of queries that users ask. Right, there is a lot of hidden elements which could drastically increase the amount of cost that you end up paying the LLM provider, or for that matter, even your cloud provider for that matter, right? Because of the inherent nature of the solution. So that's another one. And the third one is the evolving tech itself, right? Which is more external than internal. A classic example is about a year back we implemented a POC for a pharma company, where they had 30, 40 odd dashboards. We implemented a RAG-based system to extract data and more conversational BI kind of a thing, right? About 50% of what we did back then comes as pre-built agent packages today, right? Back then, all you had ready-made was LLM, and then you had to build RAG modules. You had to build an agentic layer on top of it from scratch. But fast forward to a year now, you already have a lot of packages or frameworks like RoI, LangGraph. They're all just improving day by day. So that's also the ground beneath you is also constantly moving is something that I've noticed. So that's keeping customers very, very wary when it comes to implementing agentic AI, especially at scale.
Got it. No, that's very well said, and I love the last point specifically around evolving tech. That while POCs are being done, suddenly you realize that the POC is no longer applicable because of the
Yeah.
fact that there's a new tech that's come in. And I think some of the announcements made by Google are a clear example of that.
Yeah.
Every time they
Indeed.
make an announcement, probably a hundred plus startups go bust, right? Simply because of that,
Yeah.
right? Preeti, I would want you to come in from a broader perspective, right? There are some industries that are being that we see are doing well in adoption. There are some that are not. You yourself come from a background of industries which are more regulatory oriented as well. What's been your experience, and how have you seen this evolve across industries?
So, uh, one of the key industries where we've seen a lot of benefit at an enterprise level is BFSI for sure. I think the reason is that BFSI was always very used to traditional AI. They were always experimenting with ML and so on. So there was a lot of early adoption. So that journey has helped them really accelerate their AI endeavors. So in terms of BFSI, we find that there is, value realization in the front office, middle, and back office. In the front office, we've seen a lot of customer support agents getting a lot of assistance to deliver better value to their customers. Chatbots are getting better by the day. In the middle office, which was historically the risk and the credit modeling functions, which used to use a lot of ML, they've gotten a whole lot of better with AI. And the back office is where really the ROI is playing out, right? Whether it is in terms of automated data extraction from KYC documents, or whether it is in terms of, claims, insurance claims documents, where, even unstructured text is getting read. And for certain ticket sizes, they are doing just straight through processing. So those are real. And there's agentic also that's evolving in some of those areas. So across the board, I think BFS has taken the lead in our experience. CPG is not far behind, CPG and retail, because they've used it a lot for their sales and marketing functions in terms of product innovation ideas, packaging support. Earlier, everything, if you created new categories, you had to, repeat that style guidelines and, evolve that. Now everything is automated. You can almost launch products on the fly. They're really taken e-commerce to another level in terms of content generation and publishing. All of that has gotten so much more automated, so much more creative, is actually resulting in a lot of creative engagement with users and much better customer experience. So
Right.
that's been our experience. I think the industry that has lagged has been healthcare. I think a lot of us put a lot of money in healthcare. I mean, whether it was cancer diagnostics or, those early investments we made in AI and so on. But clearly that has not played out as well as it should have, just given the data privacy issues, the issues around accuracy, reliability, right? I mean, you cannot afford any level of bias or hallucination in that space. Combined with the regulatory oversight and the penalties and the burdens that are associated with that industry. I think while there were some early investments in that area, I think that whole segment has lagged. But one thing I've seen across the board, across all the value realization metrics, is that shared services in general has done very well. Whether it's adoption of AI in supply chain, procurement, or in finance and accounting, or HR, whether it's, in India, we can do it for recruitment as well. In the US, etc., because of guidelines, you can't use A lot of big companies won't use AI in HR, but a lot of automation of the traditional HR functions, and so that whole shared services block as a horizontal has achieved a lot of value. So I think there's going to be 1 billion AI applications by 2028. So I don't think we'll be discussing ROI in the next few years.
Let's hope not. Yeah. I'll let Vinay come in. And Vinay, I wanted you to talk about 2 points. One is, what do you think about what Preeti just said? And second is, how do you see, we talked about the ROI bit of it, but what about the POC to scale? What kind of thought process can companies bring in to structure that POC to scale and go into production perspective? If you can throw some thoughts around that, as well as what you thought about what Preeti just said.
Yeah. So just wanted to add one point to what Preeti was saying, and I think this is going to be the dark horse in terms of the industry which adopts it the best and actually sees a lot of value out of it, which is basically your BPO industry. So you hear a lot about Whisper AI. I have actually spoken to a company in Chennai. It's a healthcare medical testing company which offers all these tests. And literally, they've already implemented. They have AI bit listening to conversations, prompting their telecallers, telling them what to say next, doing it in real time. And this is already in production. So with these advancements, which keep coming out every month or every couple of months, you can only imagine this is going to get a lot better. So that's one industry which I would think that is going to really be one of the biggest users as we move forward. But coming back to your other point, which we spoke about, where do companies move from POC to production, or how do they take that decision to move? There is, of course, the ROI bit, which will form a part of this response. But you want to specifically refer to these decision gateways which companies have, right? What is the approach they should take? So I'll give you what might sound like a very simplified answer, but I think the best approach to take is the common sense approach, which I think everybody tends to forget at some point of time. The AI is here at this point of time to first try and replace or automate or do something which currently possibly humans are doing, and it's also trying to then do it at scale or do it faster. But make no mistake, it's still doing the same thing. So when people forget that bit, that's when you see all the problems taking place. So if I was to ask a human being a question and he or she is to say, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that, can you give me more information? We'd gladly give it to them to get the job done. But you see people coming into bots and writing, half the things in short forms. Give me more info on XYZ, and then they get a little upset when the right information doesn't come. So I think for me, the starting point would be educating people what AI can do and cannot do, what the expectation should be. While that is one of the starting points, it's not really a decision gateway. So if you had to look at a decision gateway, it'll have to be a combination of multiple things. One would obviously be something which everybody has spoken about so far in terms of, is this really generating any value? Is this really giving me some kind of ROI? And for that, the approach the company must take is, don't even start the POC until or unless you have defined your success metrics. That is something which I think every company needs to get in. It's not a race to see how many agents I've built or whatever. It's more about, am I really getting value, and can I derive a quantifiable metric? And yes, I agree that in some cases it's not always possible to have a quantification, but yeah, wherever possible. And the other two gateways, I think, are tied a little bit close together. And again, these are points which I think Manoj touched upon briefly, and I just want to add a little bit to it, which is basically, when people do POCs, what they do is they tend to take nice, clean, sanitized, small amount of data, run their POCs, and see that everything is working great. Right? So you need to basically test it on a more real-world data complexity kind of situation. So the technical feasibility is, can that model handle this real-world complexity? Can it integrate well with other systems? Because remember, in certain cases, that AI is only one bit. You probably is getting tacked on to an existing system over there. Even in the case of bots, right? You take all the banks, right? All their websites, they added that Gen AI bit onto it. So how does it technically come in? And of course, the data availability. And the other bit which people again tend to not pay enough attention to is more grounded in your DevOps and MLOps principles of basically being able to measure at all points of time performance. It could even be technical performance like throughputs and so on, or even the way in which the model is supposed to answer. And can it be can the pipelines be built in such a way that you're retraining constantly? Because we know that without doing that, it's not going to work. So to me, if all of these are taken into account, also given that it's passed the test of being part of responsible AI, the solution, introducing ML ops, bringing or LLM ops for that matter, bringing in those principles and using them to do a lot of things like automated testing, or even synthesizing real world complex data and then doing that automated testing. That's where you would see companies defining these decision gateways clearly, and that's when you slowly see that 50% from POC going into production, probably a lot lower in some other cases, slowly going up to that 70-80% mark, which is right about where it should be. Because if you take it, there are POCs which are not going to go through, and that's my take on that. This subject.
Absolutely, very very well said. In fact, some of the points around the ML ops and the LLM ops make a lot of sense, and that's where I would want to bring Coelia in. And Coelia, two perspectives. One is based on what Vinay said, which is how BPOs are getting impacted, and EXL has had that background. You're working with them. The second portion would be the technical aspects of it. What are some of the technical gateways that companies are facing today, which are not allowing them to scale up? Like everybody said, it can be a beautiful picture if it's little data in a nice, cozy environment where everything is working exactly the way it's supposed to. But as soon as we scale up or scale out, both from an infrastructure standpoint, a data standpoint, millions of users standpoint, everything breaks. What's your experience from a technical standpoint?
Excellent question, and I would like to build upon the excellent points that's just been shared. I think what accelerates time to scale is not just architecture, it is the architecture that anticipates change. So in our panel, we already talked about that your technology is evolving. So our architecture has to be that smart that it can adopt the evolving technology. So scalability itself does not mean that we just handle more users. It means we handle the change more rapidly and in a optimal manner. So I would like to start with modular architecture. So if the more we decouple our AI components with other services like microservice architectures, we avoid a lot of bottlenecks that comes if we use only say IaaS kind of a solution approach. So now, having decoupling this AI architecture, like having us AI components loosely coupled with other services, it enables faster upgrades, reduces your downtime, and even supports your parallel processing. So I give an example. I can still retrain my AI models while my data engineer team can still refactor my data pipelines. And it doesn't break anything. There's no dependency on each other. So that's the fun fact of having a modular architecture. And that is one of the ways where we can expedite our solutions, AI solutions into the market. But my time to market actually reduces because I can constantly retrain without having a downtime. And this actually helps in a very fast-paced environments like the BPO industry or the BPM industry, and now the knowledge management industries as well, because they are constantly upgrading their data. The way they integrate with different services that changes. So the more the modular your solutions are, the more faster you can adapt to it, and the more faster you can reduce your downtimes. Just now, when I just said about MLOps and LLMs, I mean that's an unsung hero, I would say. It is what lets us scale our deployments, automatically retrain our models, and even monitor them in production. I mean, it is no longer optional. We all can realize the panic we used to have a few years ago when we had to retrain our traditional models. The kind of effort we used to put in, right? Now it is just a pipeline trigger. So imagine the time saved, the agility it brought, and the operational burden it reduced. So MLOps isn't optional. It is something that if one needs to bring in agility, one needs to work on optimizing the cost, MLOps is the way to go. Finally, I would say cloud native thinking. I really stress on that. All the kind of auto scaling infrastructure and your serverless computes enables you to grow and meet your peak demands without over provisioning. Now imagine our earlier days times, right? And where we are now. So all these serverless computes like your Azure Functions, AWS Lambda, they help us to automatically take care of the loads by auto scaling, right? Vertical and horizontal, and distributed trainings that helps us, that gives us the elastic scaling ability, right? So cloud native thinking is the need of the hour. It's not no longer an infrastructure as a service. It has to be cloud native because that's the next roadway. Then I would like to talk about decoupling the models with your data pipelines. We all understand that AI food is data, but data is constantly changing. If we make it so tightly coupled with data, we'll never be able to scale our solution with the speed that we want to. So using data contracts, schema versioning, they ensure that the changes that's happening in the data does not impact the downstream AI behavior.
Oh, got
And
it.
there are a few more that I would like to add if you allow, if the time allows. The other one I would talk about is
I'll allow you one more point before we close. Yeah.
sure. I would like to also add one thing. Our work does not end after deployment. There is real world AI drifts. We have to plan for drift monitoring. If we are not really taking care of it, we are scaling wrong assumptions. So having alert systems that constantly monitor the AI predictions and automatically trigger the training workflows, that is what is needed. Because if we ignore the AI drifts, our solution is definitely going to fail. So I would say speed in AI is not about building faster. It is about building systems that evolve faster.
That's very, very well put. And in fact, if I were to ask, I mean, if I have to ask everybody, I think one thing that I've heard across is having the right thought process is critical. Be it what Bhavani talked about, the HERT framework, and thinking about not just the quantitative but the qualitative aspects of it. It's a thought process. It's not just about going in, diving in, and just doing things at a beck and call, right? Or just doing things without the thought process. In fact, I keep talking about this. There is the people, the process, and the purpose. Everything has to come together in order for any AI initiative to come through. When Manoj talked about evolving technology, that resonated very well with Koelia, with what you said, which is it's not just about saying that you've built, but you need to build for scale and you need to build for change, right, as much as you do it for just building a single project or one particular architecture. Or when Preeti talked about how healthcare was actually one of the leaders, and I know IBM was one of the companies which had absolutely led that entire initiative. They put in so much money and investment and effort to make healthcare AI a reality with all of their initiatives. But still, it has sort of lagged behind. Maybe it's the mindset, maybe it's the structure, maybe it's the framework of the companies on the other side that are not able to do it, right? But BFSI seems to have picked up from there and is really now calling the shots, right? But again, with what Vinay said, the way he summarized the entire setup with regards to how it is very important to think of the POC to production with the right decision gateways and common sense, right? I think sometimes we just miss that. The IT team is constantly thinking about their own initiatives, and they forget about the business outcomes. The business team thinks of something magical, and IT is not even able to understand or reflect on it or even deliver it. So there just seems to be a lack of common sense, which I thought was the key word in this entire conversation, which is if we start to think the right way, if we start to structure the right way, and if we start to think for change rather than thinking for just delivering a particular outcome. All of these initiatives will scale. POC to production will happen. We will see that 30 to 40% go up to the 70 and the 80%. And that's where people will start to believe in AI. I think we're at a point where people have finally started to believe in AI, from it just being a shiny object, or something every boardroom wants to talk about, to every single person out there, whether they're from tech or non-tech, being able to use it. But thanks a lot, everybody. I think this was wonderful. I loved all the points, and I'm sure
Thank you.
anybody who's listening to this would really take a lot of heart from this conversation and have a lot of learnings from it. Thank you, everybody, for your inputs.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Bye.